Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm Brett Twitty, Director of Admissions for the Executive Formats of the Darden MBA, and you are listening to our 10th episode. In this episode, we'll be featuring an interview I recently recorded with Patrick Weeks. Patrick is an EMBA Format student in our class of 2018 Rosslyn section, and I recently sat down with him to talk with him a little bit more about entrepreneurship and the executive formats. This is part of an ongoing series we will be doing, about entrepreneurship and the executive formats, and hopefully you've already caught our first episode in this series, our interview with Hannah Doppels. If you haven't, make sure you go back and listen to that one. But before we get to my interview with Patrick, just a couple admissions updates for those of you who are thinking about applying or in the process of applying to Darden. Our next deadline is November 27th, so keep that date in mind. If you are working on an application for our November deadline, you have some questions, please reach out. Let us know how we can help. We can be reached at exec, that's ExecMBA at darden.virginia.edu. Always happy to help. We also offer phone conversations and in-person meetings, what we call office hours. I will actually be hosting office hours in the Washington, D.C. area on November 20th and Norfolk, Virginia on November 21st. So if you are in the D.C. area or if you're near Norfolk, consider signing up for one of those. I hope to see you on the road. So without further ado, this is my interview with Patrick Weeks. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Brett.
So for our listeners at home, tell us a little bit more about who you are. What do you do? What did you do before coming to Darden?
Certainly. So I've been at Darden a year now, and I work at a startup up in Crystal City, Arlington, Virginia, called Notarize as an operations manager. So basically I lead a team of notaries who you can get connected to 24/7 over an iPhone or laptop, iPad, and get a document notarized remotely. It's sort of like using Skype. You can see them over video and apply a digital signature to your document.
So what led you to Darden? Why did you think about getting an MBA, and specifically, why did you choose Darden?
Well, an MBA was always a goal of mine. Through my conversations with different mentors, I knew I wanted a long-term career in business. As a military veteran, I was coming back to the business world after having a business undergrad. I did 4.5 years in the Marine Corps, so I felt like the MBA was, in some ways, a way to get caught up or get up to speed after being in essentially a different world for a few years. And then for me and my family, we're settling down in the D.C. area. We live in Alexandria. And the advice I got from multiple mentors was, if you know you want to stick to a geography, you know you want an MBA, go to the best school in that area. Don't mess around going anywhere else around the world that might have competitive programs as well. You're going to have the best network if you just go to the best school in that region. So for that, and obviously many other reasons, Darden got to the top of the list. That's sort of my thought process.
Sure. So how did you think about the executive formats? Did you think about going full-time, or were you always focused on working while pursuing your MBA?
I really wanted to continue working while pursuing my MBA. The big sort of hesitation was work-life balance. Like, it's a lot, and it's the same time, 21 months to get through the entire MBA program. So a good friend of mine who I served with was 2 years ahead of me. He's a 2016 grad from the executive, he was a global executive MBA. And I was able to see how he made it work and sort of learn some of those lessons, and it really helped his career because his career was still going on course. I felt like he didn't miss out on anything there. The MBA has its own timeline on the side, but also they sort of cross-pollinate as well. Mm-hmm. So he was able to use his MBA even before it was over to improve his career, to get different jobs, to improve his performance at work. So it seemed like if it was something I could handle, I would want to do the executive program. And really, when you look at how much time you have in the day, how much energy you have in the day, I found it's like a matter of priorities. So it's been about a year since I watched TV. I'm not one of those guys who can tell you what I was binging on Netflix. But I still have time for work, still have time for family, have time for MBA. And that's just sort of the season in life. You make trade-offs, but so far it's definitely manageable. Definitely been rewarding. And I'm happy I did the executive program. Although I think if other people were looking at the full-time program, I could see how that could work as well. I think maybe you have benefits on that of sort of the network where, I don't live with my other classmates. I'm not quite as close to them, so it takes a little more work to build that network. So there's give and takes, but for me, I'm very happy with the executive format.
Well, good. I was going to ask you, how has the first year gone? I think what we always hear from students, and you can second this or say that's not quite the case, but we always hear how quickly it goes by, right? You don't have a whole lot of time to sit around and think. You go from a leadership residency to a weekend residency to a weekend residency to maybe a global residency. You got distance learning going on. Of course, all the learning team meetings and other things you're doing with your classmates. So it's just one thing after another. And, of course, no real break for that 21-month period.
No, not at all, yeah. It definitely has flown by for me. Absolutely. I am surprised how fast it's gone by. So I'm over halfway to my May 2018 graduation date, and I'm just trying to savor it on the back half here.
Yeah, I was talking with some 2017s who graduated this past May, and it's interesting, right? It's an intense experience. I think most people would say that, right? You're juggling a lot. You got a busy personal life, professional life, and school. At Darden's not the easiest path you can perhaps take. You know that well. But talking with some of our 2017s at an event we had earlier this week, they were saying how much they miss it. And they miss being in school with the people, in their class. It's sort of a special experience that you only get to share, really one time. I mean, you always have it in common, but to be in school, to be learning together and going through this experience.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of the advice I got, a lot of the people I talked to when you're looking to get an MBA, they're talking about what it will give you, and they're always thinking sort of down the road after the MBA program. It'll help me in my career. It'll help me switch industries. I'll make more money. And I felt like maybe for myself and some of my peers, we a little bit glossed over too much about just the experience. It's definitely been a while since I was in school, so after I sort of got back in the swing of things, it's sort of like riding a bike. It took me a little while to get back in the swing of things, but now that I'm sort of in the student rhythm, actually just the learning is rewarding. The classroom environment is rewarding. Spending time and studying with classmates is rewarding, and that's something that I didn't really expect. I always felt like it's really tough. You hear about what a grind it is, but it'll be worth it in the end. But it's not so much like the ends justify the means. If I could go back and talk to myself a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'd say actually just being at Darden itself is a great destination. Because, my friends from 2016, 17 classes who have graduated finally can stop and smell the roses, and I wish I could have just sort of enjoyed myself a little bit and not worried too much about the next upcoming test, the next upcoming meeting, and whatnot. So it's a great time, actually.
Yeah, that was always surprising to me, having those conversations with students, the sentimentality that they feel right before the end. Because they're excited to maybe have some more free time and to sort of be able to focus on things that they haven't been able to focus on in the same way for the past couple of years. And yet, almost to a person, they say, I'm really going to miss having case discussions and with this group of people and traveling the world or whatever it is. So that always surprised me a little bit, but I think it's a very pleasant surprise. It's a great thing. So this conversation is a little bit about entrepreneurship, and obviously you work for a startup. We think at Darden, given that we're a case method school, and you have to think about things from that C-suite perspective, which obviously if you're an entrepreneur and want to start your own business, that's the perspective you need.
Right.
So we think we have a good story around entrepreneurship, but maybe talk a little bit about your experience so far. How do you feel like Darden's impacted your work? Do you feel like it's a program that would well suit somebody who wants to start their own business or work in a startup environment?
Yes, absolutely. This has been one of my sort of happiest surprises with the Darden program is how applicable it is to my day-to-day job, my day-to-day life. When you think about an MBA, a couple aspects that make it unique is just first how broad it is. So the Darden is very intentional about the global outlook, the global focus, but also just broad across all business functions. So every quarter you've got 3 very different classes. It could be finance, decision analysis, management communication, all in the same quarter together. So very fast you experience a lot of different scenarios and learn a lot of different lessons for different functions in a business. And I think for an entrepreneur, one of the things that makes you unique as a professional is that you're probably wearing a lot of hats. And that might be a frustration or it might be a joy, but you have a lot on your plate, competing priorities, and for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they go into business because they feel a personal pain point. Not just they like to work for themselves or they're innovative, but there's something that they know about that they can bring a better solution to the world that some big corporation's not doing. So they have a more niche or technical background perhaps, whereas that broad base of experience through the cases across different functions that you get in the MBA, I found is incredibly useful. I don't need to know everything about accounting that a CPA knows, but having just a couple of quarters enables me to do basic financial projections, to look through our own accounting documents, and then work with a consultant accountant and speak on his level to understand what our financial needs are for our business, for example. And you just can repeat that across every different aspect of the business you touch. So in my mind, the benefit of having an MBA as an entrepreneur, or at least an MBA sort of education and the experience part of it, is it almost makes you a second-time founder. I think this is only magnified by having the case studies because second-time founders, from what I understand, are much more successful, have a much higher success rate for founding business than first-timers because obviously you learn a lot of things the hard way, which is just how things go. But through the case method, how many cases are in one curriculum now at last count?
I think a couple hundred over the course of the full program.
Right. So that full program, you've got definitely over 200 cases. So essentially, you've stood in 200 other managers' shoes, thinking about one aspect or multiple intertwined aspects of business, and tried to solve some problem, tried to understand it, and then probably your first guess wasn't the best answer, which is something you can get to through the discussions, through the professor-guided case method. So many times in my experience, I've gotten to a situation and I've almost had a feeling like I've been there before. And it's because in the case method, I've covered that exact topic with a similar sort of experience before. And I think it's very useful in one aspect of just the broad overview. And I don't think it'd be the same with lecture-based. I can't bring a checklist of lessons to a real-life situation the same way that I can bring sort of that memory and the feeling and even the emotional and interpersonal dynamics that you get from a case method through your learning team, through the class.
So one of the things students talk about oftentimes is this idea that learning the case method, and I think this is what you're getting at, gives you a certain amount of confidence, right? Because you have rehearsed this senior level decision making and you've cultivated this perspective where you have to think integratively and not just see a finance problem as a finance problem, but also think about it within the broader business line. And the other thing we stress with folks, and when you look at Darden, sort of the fact that we're a general management program, and think about the executive format specifically, is that it's about fluency rather than expertise, right? So you can sit in a room with an accountant and ask questions and understand what they're sharing with you, but at the end of the day, be able to take that information and make a decision with it. I think there's an aspect to the experience that gets students comfortable with decision making, gets students comfortable with having a perspective on what should be done. Does that resonate with your experience?
Absolutely. And that's something I was looking for. I was happy to find at Darden because, debits and credits are not going to get me out of bed in the morning. But intellectually, I know how important it is. Just to continue the accounting example, to understand the influence to the rest of the business and to understand the data and insights that you can get from sort of the top level management view of whether it's accounting or anything else really.
So you work in a startup and you've managed a social media empire. Is that one way to say it? A media empire on the side. Just obviously teasing a little bit, but you do manage a few blogs.
Right. So I've always been an entrepreneur. As a kid, I ran a little business giving other kids baseball lessons to make money. Actually, always had that itch. So in college, actually, I ran something called Laundromat when I needed some spending money as a freshman. I was in a dorm of maybe a couple hundred freshman guys, and a bunch of 18-year-old guys leaving home for the first time, all have one common pain point, which is they're engaged in sports, they're running around, they're busy, and they don't have mom around anymore, so they can't figure out how to do the laundry on their own. So in my dorm room, I actually started a little business doing a pick-up and drop-off laundry service for my whole dorm. and I would run all the laundry machines in the basement of our dorm and run back and forth to people's rooms, picking up and dropping off their laundry for them. Here's how great the profit margin on this was, though. I had them provide the quarters to run the machines. I used their soap and dryer sheets and whatnot, so I had essentially no overhead other than a little advertising, some signs I put up around campus. And essentially all I was doing was logistics, running back and forth. I kept track of on my desk with some little timers, and when I had to go down, switch loads, when I had to deliver loads. And then I would upsell them at the end, too. So, their laundry's done. Okay, hey, Brett, your laundry's done. Oh, you're running to your study group. You know what? For $5, I'll fold it all for you as well. You wouldn't want it to be wrinkled, right? Okay, yeah, sure, Patrick.
Wow.
So I've always had that itch.
How long did you do that? I mean, was that just during your freshman year of college, or did you maintain it as a going concern?
I kept going into sophomore year a little bit. Eventually, got another job on campus where I could work in the food services, which had the incredible perk of food being able to disappear.
Well, free meals, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something, particularly when you're in college, there's something about that.
Right. So here I am a decade later, and I run some blogs, some social media. Definitely built up my skills on my own, but also through some of the startups I'm working with on social media as well. So the biggest one I run is Marine OCS Blog. The purpose of the OCS blog is to take college kids, high school kids, young people who know that they want to join the Marine Corps, and essentially educate and motivate them and connect them to the broader community to help them understand all the steps required and the personal development required to get all the way through. And this actually grew out of a blog I started before I went into OCS, because I just couldn't find one site online back in 2008 that said, you're in college today, here's all the 15 steps and to get to Marine officer. So I just started blogging all the steps. You have workouts, you have paperwork. It's quite a bureaucratic process. Well, it really took off, and through answering people's questions and continuing to write and create more content, video, social, it's taken off, and I've kept it going for almost 10 years now. And I run that on the side, and it's always been a side gig from the whole time, but now it's to the point where I have a couple of people who work for me remotely on the site. I've used contractors to build different technical parts, graphic design parts, run interviewing campaigns for me, things like that. So I don't know, it's been a lot of fun. I definitely consider myself an entrepreneur, but that's a little bit short of a full-blown out startup.
Right. So you got about another year in the program or so. What are you most excited about this last year? What are you looking forward to?
I'm really excited to get a little more breathing space in the program, as sort of everyone feels like we've got our feet under ourselves now, and I can already feel a turning of attention towards the network itself. So I think just recently I've had a lot more interactions and investment in the relationships with my classmates that we've been making. So we've done things such as cookouts, barbecues, socializing, getting to know each other, but also getting involved in other aspects of each other's businesses, doing sort of side gigs, entrepreneurial things together. It's been great to actually look at other Darden students for possible fits for our business at our startup. Recently hired one out of the full-time program. So that's pretty exciting to look a little bit broader into how we can leverage that network, and just starting to get a taste of it now already.
Nice. So wrapping up our conversation here, Patrick, obviously we talked a little bit about entrepreneurship and the executive formats. What's one thing that you would stress for someone who's an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur looking at Darden, and specifically the executive formats of the Darden MBA?
Right. I think that the executive format of the Darden MBA is especially intriguing for entrepreneurs, because as opposed to common perception, entrepreneurs are actually more risk averse than the common population, from some studies coming out of the UK. So if that sort of turns on your head, your image of an entrepreneur as someone who just goes out there, throws caution to the wind, tries to do something crazy and hope that it sticks, then the Darden program is one of the best ways you can control risk as you want to build your business or think about building a business, even while you have another full-time job to sort of support a dream, as many entrepreneurs do. Because from what I felt is it almost gives you a roadmap or a picture into your future. I think there's 2 stages to successful entrepreneurship. One is sort of finding that product market fit, figuring out the solution to the problem that you're feeling. And then this next problem, and sort of the second stage of a startup and entrepreneur's journey, is the startup to scale. And how you grow from, we're figuring out how to solve this problem with our innovative product or solution, to how do we grow this into a full business. And I think that scale up part, by going through the Darden ExecMBA, you have such broad understanding of where you're going, how to get there, and so many reps, as it were, in these broader management skills, that I think that's how you can scale up yourself as an individual before you scale up your business. And that growth trajectory will be so much faster. You can prioritize your time so much. It doesn't really cost you in the long run the time and money you think it does. It's more of an investment, so that when you go through the program and then come out of the program, you have tools to just accelerate time. It's also you can get more done in the same amount of time. And I think the case method, the entrepreneurial focus, the global focus, network, all plays into that. So that would be my encouragement. If you're an entrepreneur, think about it. I don't think you will regret it. And I'm happy to talk to anyone, of course, who has more questions about that.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. And, talking with some of the students, they sometimes cite that there's just this inherent confidence that comes with going through the program. And you do feel like you can take on a lot because you've just taken on a lot. The time management piece is undeniable because if you figure out how to fit 20 hours of schoolwork per week into your schedule, then you could easily fit, starting a business into it.
Absolutely. And you've got years of leadership experience compressed into a 21-month package. So absolutely stronger coming out the other end.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and really appreciate you being on the podcast.
My pleasure, Brett. Happy to be here.
Patrick Weeks, EMBA Format student in our class of 2018. And of course, we welcome your ideas, comments, thoughts, suggestions. If you have anything in mind that you would like us to discuss here on the podcast, let us know. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. As always, thanks for listening.